Hello and welcome everyone to another episode of the Cultured Nerd Podcast. This week we're actually going to be talking about Batman the Caped Crusader. We're going to be talking about the show that is taking the internet by storm, and for better or for worse, some people are loving it, some people are really not loving it. So we're going to talk about it. I, of course, liked the show. Michael didn't really care for it. So we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about our feelings toward the show, what we did and didn't like, and we're going to I guess we're just going to rip off that Band-Aid and let's sit down and let's talk about Batman the Caped Crusader.
I'm sorry I didn't like it. I really am. When I saw there's a huge poster by my house, they have Batman on the outside of the poster. It looks amazing. I knew it looked like the original animated series, so I figured it was going to be a remake. Taylor, it's not a remake. It's like a lateral step. I don't know whom the audience was for this show, Taylor.
So I watched all 8 episodes. I did power through it. It was 8 episodes? I think it's 8. I powered through the whole series, and there was a lot of stuff that I liked, a lot of stuff that I scratched my head about. It was one of those shows that it's kind of like you said, I don't know who the audience was for. I very much kind of felt the same way because they said, we're going to make this show as a spiritual successor to the Batman animated series.
But you can watch but Taylor can watch the animated
series. You don't need a spiritual successor. It's perfect.
But I mean, you can watch that animated series with your kids and it's entertaining to both of you. Yeah. This show is too slow for a Saturday morning cartoon audience, and it's also a little bit more adult. Now, not an adult in a scandalous way, but there's the scene when Batman's in the sub and he sees all the dead bodies in the water and the skeletons coming out. It was a cool image, but it just didn't bite hard enough. It felt like they were bad guys with training wheels on.
Yeah, there was a lot of stuff in this show that worked and a lot of stuff that really didn't work. So we're going to just talk about some of the stuff right off the bat. I'm going to give a rundown of some of the interesting things that I noticed while watching the film. So first off, we had Detective Montoya. She was actually front and center as a detective this time around. She was put in charge of the Batman task force. She had a long-standing relationship with Barbara Gordon, and she actually had a romantic relationship with Harley Quinn. Didn't work out because obviously Harley Quinn turned out to be a crazy person. The Penguin was a gender-bent Oswalda Cobblepot. My issues with Penguin in this show wasn't that she was a woman. It was that Minnie Driver sounded just like Minnie Driver. She didn't try to do anything unique with her voice. It sounded like I was watching Jane from Tarzan with, I'm going to kill you, that kind of attitude. There was no fluctuations in her voice. It just sounded like Minnie Driver. That was my issues with the character. You had detectives Blas and Harvey Bullock. Both of them were dirty in this time around.
And the guy on the left is voiced by Jake from Finn and Jake, and he also does 5 other voices in the show.
Yeah,
I kept spotting his. Right? I just kept spotting his voice all over the place.
You had Commissioner Gordon, which he's black again. That's cool. No reason for it. Just it was that. The big difference that I saw was that Barbara Gordon this time around is not only older, but she's also a lawyer. She's not anything like she was in any other capacity of any other incarnation of her, other than the fact that she believes in justice.
Yeah,
it was a huge departure for the character.
I didn't watch all 8 episodes. Are they setting her up to be Batgirl?
I don't think they're setting anyone up to be anything in the show.
Yeah, that they barely set up Batman to be Batman. Taylor, why is Batman such a dick to everybody?
Yeah, he's a big dick to everybody in this show. So we had Catwoman, which was a good callback to the first appearance of Catwoman. We had Firefly, which they named him by Firefly, but he said, I'm not Firefly, I'm Firebug, which is more of a time period accurate version. They would call them firebugs, not fireflies. That's kind of a modern name for those things. We had Basil Carlo Clayface, which he was done pretty well, but it was very slug of an episode. We actually had Dr. Harleen Quinzel as Bruce's psychiatrist and Renee Montoya's girlfriend, who then turned out to be Harley Quinn and just batshit crazy. That was fun. Alfred Pennyworth was a huge departure in the show. He somehow was still British, but he wasn't hired on by the Wayans. He just started taking care of Bruce because he was a beat cop that was there when Bruce's parents got killed. So my understanding is that essentially what happened in Batman Begins with Commissioner Gordon giving him the hug saying, "I'm going to protect you," but then Commissioner Gordon brings him home. And that's essentially what we got with this version of Alfred. So that was cool. Not really. We had, as the show went on, another big one was that we had Rupert Thorne. They had a big play in the mob, but they didn't use any of the mob from the comics, like Conrad Falcone or Salvatore Maroni. They used the mob angle that was primarily used in Batman the Animated Series, which was Rupert Thorne. So another interesting callback there. As you said it before, Harvey Dent was just a major asshole. He was running for mayor this time, and he's very flimsy in his morals, and that was fun.
I think I said that off air, but I didn't like that he was already a jerk and mean to everybody. So then when he becomes a supervillain, everyone's like, yeah, that guy was a dick to everybody. Of course he is.
As the show went on, there was 2 episodes that actually had real, legitimate supernatural villains. And I thought those were really cool. First episode we had was the Gray Ghost, the Gentleman Ghost. He was actually a ghost. And one of my favorite Easter eggs of that entire episode was that just like in any supernatural episode for Batman, they have him go to someone for help to get this done. And who did he go to in this show? Papa Midnight from Constantine. That was actually a really cool deep cut, like where he's they call him Mr. Midnight, all this stuff, and then he shows up at the end in his like Southern pimp outfit and takes the ghost away, which is pretty cool. The next big episode is where the most Easter eggs that I found was this was the one that was called Nocturna, and she was like this vampire girl. Let me find that picture. She was, I'm losing my picture. Where are you? There she is. She was basically like an energy vampire, but this episode had a butt ton of cameos. First off, right off the bat, you had Dick Grayson and Jason Todd, both in an orphanage, both sneaking into the circus. Nocturna is walking into Suck Dry. That's Stephanie Brown, spoiler, and Robin. And then as the episode goes on, there's also Carrie Kelly, another Robin. We had 4 Robins in this episode. And the way the episode ended, I don't think we will ever see them again. I'm pretty sure that this version of Batman is never going to have a sidekick because he's a giant asshole. That was one of my big issues with him, is that he stopped being an asshole in the final 5 minutes of the final episode. But up until that point, he was just a dick.
As a person that watched all 8 episodes, do the episodes feel formulaic? Because one of the things I liked about the animated series is that sometimes you would get like a straightforward mystery. Sometimes you'd get like a wacky adventure. Like the episodes all kind of feel different. Do these feel a little cut and paste of villain of the week and the problems associated with that?
It actually kind of did. It very much felt like a villain of the week show. And as the episodes went on, some of my more bigger discrepancies was at one cool cameo right here off the bat. In the episode with Nocturna, that's Lois Lane and Jimmy Olsen. Not only Lois Lane and Jimmy Olsen, but that's Lois Lane and Jimmy Olsen from the old 40s Superman TV show.
And what's crazy is they look so different than these Archer-looking characters. Like you can see that they look like a different style. Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of people are automatically thinking that, holy crap, we're going to see Superman in season 2. And we might, but it might be that same old Superman from the old serials.
Taylor,
which is going to be fantastic.
Who's going to pay for a second season of this?
They already did. What? Amazon already ordered a second season.
What? We're going to get more of this?
We're going to get more. Hopefully, after the second round, they're going to fix some stuff because I think there's some legitimate complaints that people have. Another interesting part was that we had this detective that was with them and then kind of betrayed everyone near the end. This detective, they called him by name a few times. Let me see if I can... I don't want to mess up his name. So it is. I just want to make sure I get the. This was Detective Jim Corrigan. And for anyone who knows DC Comics well, Jim Corrigan later gets attached to the Spirit of Death and becomes the Spectre. So that was a very cool, constant inclusion of this character. And then also when this character became sort of a betrayer, it kind of gives reason for the Spectre to say, I'm going to hitch my reins to you, and you're going to work off your debt for being a shitty cop. So I thought that was pretty cool. Apparently, I didn't. Go ahead.
Did they show off Joker?
Yes, they did. Apparently, I didn't notice this at first. This character is Deadshot. This random mob sharpshooter was actually listed in the credits as Deadshot, as the character's, not Deadshot like his name, but Floyd Lawton, like the actual guy underneath the mask. So if he shows up in a mask in the next one, I'm very curious how they're going to do it. But apparently, that was Deadshot. That one guy was that random bystander was Deadshot. Two-Face was interesting. I will say that, because as this show went on, near the end, Two-Face became Two-Face, but a lot of people didn't really care for like just the fact that he was disfigured. There wasn't any color changes.
Taylor, this is the first time I'm looking at it. I hate that Two-Face.
Yeah, he had the gray hair, but they actually did kind of a split personality here, where you had Harvey, who was trying to be like, no, we can't do this, and then the other side, he was like, no, we're going to kill everybody because they betrayed us. So you actually had that duality. So by the end, you started to feel bad for Dent because you had this monster that was worse than Dent. So it was like, okay, that sucks.
I mean, what you're telling me is it sounds like there's a lot of monsters. We literally had Boris Karloff. We had a Dracula. We had a Frankenstein. We had a ghost. We had a cat burglar. I mean, it sounds like
what was interesting about the show was that it was very much that. It felt like this show was kind of like this like 1920s pulpy detective noir story,
but an alternate universe. It's not our version of the 30s, because you would never see these people in these positions.
Yeah. And then you also have this like universal monsters angle to all of it. Like there's all of these villains that were like, okay, that's interesting. That's interesting. So I liked it. And then obviously to stick people around for the second season, the last 10 seconds of the show showed this random shack in the Narrows with a bunch of bodies strapped to chairs, one guy dying with the serum, and then you had this very sinister character that kind of popped up. Is the picture not even here? Where's my Joker? Goodness, I don't have the picture here. But you had a quick shot of the Joker, and I'm gonna have to pull it up real fast because apparently I don't have it. But it actually very much made Joker look like a serial killer. Like it's not like normal Joker. It's like, oh, this is horrendous.
Well, do you feel like the other? I don't know. I got stuck on the middle of episode 2. I was unhappy with the pacing of it. Do you think episodes 3 and 4? Do you think it gets better each episode?
It does. They do actually fix the flow as the show goes on. It does get better. Here's the Joker, by the way. And he's
Great.
like
that looks like that other vampire. That looks like Nosferatu vampire.
He like straight up is like a serial killer, because if you can see properly over his left side, he's got a syringe, and he was like straight up like just injecting toxins into people to find the right formula to make his laughing juice. So this version of the Joker is not going to be like the slap you in the face with the fist Joker. This is going to be like, I killed all these people with a smile on their face. This is more like the Frank Miller Joker. So it's a very interesting, different take on him. One character that's colossally disappointed me, and I think maybe it's just my interpretation of the character, or maybe their interpretation was different, or maybe they got it wrong, or maybe I had it wrong, was Onomatopoeia. This character is a very cool character in the comics, but I was always under the impression that he was very much like whatever, he didn't narrate himself with his own voice. He would make the sounds that he was trying to do. Like when he would open his mouth, he would make the sound of a gunshot, not just say gunshot. Or like he wouldn't say drip, drip, drip. It would be like the actual dripping sounds. Like he could make the sounds and trick people into thinking that the sound is a real sound.
He's
In
the
this
guy
show,
from Police Academy.
Essentially, that's how I always read it. Like in my mind, I read it as like in the comics that this was a guy throwing his voice and making these sounds. But in the show, he was quite literally narrating what he was doing. It's like drip, 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 bark, bark, gunshot. Like I was like, dude, he's saying the sound effects. That's not working for me. Like,
I like your interpretation of it because it feels like a weird, like guy from the 30s at a circus has the power of throwing his voice, and now he robs banks or something like that.
yeah, like in my mind, that's what he was doing. So maybe I'm just like crazy and I've been reading it wrong the entire time I've read it in the comics. But
no way would you in a comic book have a guy say drip, drip, drip. He would make the noise of it.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So I was just like, when he started doing that, I'm like, what is he doing? Bruce Timm, what are you doing? I was like so confused.
They very clearly, this is a gadget Superman or Batman. I apologize. This is a very gadget heavy Batman. In the first episode, I believe we see the car and the submarine, which I guess makes sense if he's taking on these, villains all over the place. I was just confused about the technology of this world. I feel like in the original animated series, I understood the limitations of the world. This one, I don't understand.
Yeah.
I don't understand why some things feel old-timey and some things feel futuristic.
Yeah, so there was a lot of that stuff where I was just kind of like, what is his technology level? And they made reference to it a few times where Batman has like Lucius Fox was a character that played a role in the show, but he didn't work for Wayne Tech.
He was his lawyer.
He was his lawyer. And they made one reference to him like saying, oh, what I want to use that discretionary fund of yours. And he's like, nope, that's my slush fund. That's when I have fun. And you're like, wow, Batman literally is embezzling. Like they said it straight out that he created this discretionary fund so he can just build shit that has nothing to do with his company. So who's making this shit?
I liked that we saw that Bruce Wayne is the real Mask. That when he's walking around as Batman, I'm thinking about when he's walking around on the boat and he's going underneath and he jumps in the water.
Yeah, and he's like spilling his drink and stuff. And he's like, well, guess I had too many. I'm like, okay, I get this.
But I just don't understand why Batman was so mean to all the people in his life. I mean, I guess he hasn't learned to like them yet or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, so that was something that I thought was a little interesting too, was that so this version of
Batman should only be mean to bad guys. He beats up bad guys.
So this version of Batman, apparently, so his origin's a little bit different. So his parents got killed. The night his parents died, he wakes up Alfred and says, I'm going to make them all pay. So he decides to be Batman at 8 years old and never gets over it. And it's just
so that's he's a serial killer. That's how serial killers start.
Yeah, so I was watching this. I'm like, wow, that's kind of like a sociopathic serial killer stance for Batman to make. Like as a child, he's like, I'm going to get them all. And I'm like, okay, someone needs some therapy.
Yeah, for sure. But it's the 30s, so they don't believe in it yet.
Yeah, but apparently they do because Harley Quinn is an actual therapist that is seeing a bunch of people.
Yeah, but isn't Harley Quinn bad at her job? She got talked into being dumped in a vat of acid. She's not good at her job.
Not this Harley Quinn. She's actually very smart, and she actually becomes Harley Quinn on her own. A big difference in the story. But she started experimenting on some of her patients that she felt were menaces to society. So she would start like manipulating these patients and convincing them to donate their entire fortunes and then either kill themselves or become her hired goons. Like she actually made one of her guys become King Tut from the 60s TV show.
I fully then say that she's bad at her job. That should not be the aims of what she's doing.
Yeah,
she's not good at her job.
She's good, but she's using her powers wrong.
Yeah, okay, that's okay. Okay, I guess that's the way you put it. I think it's funny that they even decided to do her. I feel like she's so now a part of that Suicide Squad version of her. The Margot Robbie version is so much of that. I just didn't think you would go back and do the other one.
Yeah. It was a very interesting take. A lot of people didn't like the changes made to a lot of these characters. I listed off most of the changes as we saw. And they were what they were. I mean, it wasn't like I didn't hate them. I didn't love them. It was like, okay, these are the changes we have. And I just kind of moved on. But
I want to say that there's been lots of Batmans, and I know that there's a lot of people that like slow, detective, grounded level Batman. That's fine. I grew up reading comic books where Batman was fighting Spawn. I want a little bit more out of my Batman, and I like that element of it. And this show just didn't scratch that itch for me. And I think that's why it didn't resonate with me the same way that, like, many of the Batmans in the Warner Brother cartoons, I really like those Batmans. And they've been all over the place in those shows. And I've been pretty good with almost all of them.
So it's interesting because like I'm watching the show all the way through, and I see that they wanted to give us this detective noir style Batman, but you can't do that in a 25-minute episode. You need to make these episodes a little bit longer, otherwise you get Scooby-Doo style detectives. And it just doesn't work where the first or second face you see is the bad guy. And that's essentially what we got in the show, was that the first or second face you saw was actually the villain at the end. So I was very much like, oh, okay, so if you want to do this Batman story and you want to do it correctly, but you're going to situate yourself to be just like the old animated series and make super short episodes, this isn't going to work for me, guys.
Yeah, I think maybe that's what it is. Maybe these should have been 45 minutes to an hour, and you let it breathe a little bit more or something like that. Because just in this presentation of it, you're right. It is Scooby-Doo.
So that being said, all the voice work was fantastic.
It's out of this world, and they got a lot of fun people to come play bit parts. Paul Scheer got to do a character. Like, people that are fans of these worlds got to be involved.
Yeah, and so one that caught me off guard was Hamish Linklater, the actor who did the voice of Batman. Phenomenal Batman. Like, he did a fantastic, very duality of his voice between Bruce and Batman. He did a great job, very felt different, and I could not believe that this was the guy from Midnight Mass, and I definitely could not believe that this was Dr. Doom's assistant from Fantastic Four back in 2005. Like, wow. Good for him. Wow. He pulled off one of the most convincing Batman voices we've gotten in a long time.
Yeah, Batman sounded like Batman. Totally agree. The show sounded great. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I like the animation style for the most part. I think sometimes it looked a little bit too much like Archer, and I expected the characters to sound like that. But that was a show was also animated well, so maybe that's just what animation looks like now.
Yeah, I mean, we had a lot of good stuff. We had a lot of good voices. Tom Kenny, better known for his role as SpongeBob, was Firefly. Good for him.
That's cool. Tom Kenny's got a great voice. He's a million characters.
Yeah. They got Christina Ricci as Catwoman. Daedric Bader, who actually played Batman in Batman the Brave and the Bold, was Harvey Dent, and he sounded like a giant asshole the whole time. Toby Stevens, a fantastic actor from the Netflix Lost in Space and Black Flag. The pirate show that I absolutely fell in love with was The Gentleman Ghost, and he was fantastic as it. But the show was slow, and it very much, as I watched it, it did pick up its pacing. It got a little bit better as time went on, pacing-wise, but it very much felt like I could see why Warner Brothers passed on it. I could see why they were like, this isn't going to work for us, because what made Batman the Animated Series so special was Paul Dini. And having him write so much of that original show and being so integral to that initial Batman animated series, you realize now what Bruce Timm is without Paul Dini and Bruce Timm is with Paul Dini, and I really felt like Paul Dini was missing.
What is Paul Dini working on right now?
Probably comics at this point. I mean, he's almost 70 and he's probably just tired, you know. But he was the guy who actually helped create Harley Quinn, because he and Bruce Timm were the ones who made Harley Quinn for the first time in '92. He also literally did everything in the Batman animated universe. He was part of the Batman, the original show, the New Adventures of Batman when they kind of revamped it, the Superman show, Batman Beyond, Mask of the Phantasm. He was Justice League Unlimited. He was there all the way through. So that flavor was, I can kind of attribute to a lot of that flavor being him and Bruce Timm's collaborations.
And I like all of those Batmans. I enjoyed. Now maybe it's because I was young when I saw them. I don't know, but like, you saw as a kid, Batman the Animated Series, him go from like fists and a couple of gadgets to going up against the biggest villains in the world.
Yeah.
And having, and being a super, almost being as equivalent as a superhuman, just being a normal guy.
Yeah. So it was a very interesting show. I didn't hate it, wasn't completely enamored with it. If I had to give it anything, I would have probably give it like a 7.5. A solid 7.5 of a show. Like there was not enough to give it an 8. I mean, I give the original Batman animated series a 10 out of 10. That show molded my childhood. Even now, when I'm reading Batman comics, I read it in the voices of those characters. Like,
yeah, what's his name? What's his name lives in my head rent free. I just think about it. That's the voice of Batman.
Yeah, and like Commissioner Gordon sounds like the Commissioner Gordon from that show to me. Sure. So it's really hard to like not talk about the lasting impact of that original show. And this show was made to try to be the spiritual successor of that show, but it really felt like a spiritual sidestep. It wasn't as good. I can see what they were going for, but it also felt like this was the Batman, but in the 40s.
And with everything Taylor said that I totally agree with, change up the art style then. If you know you can't be that, just be something else. And the fact that it looks like the other show, but it's not the show, double down on the art. Make it grittier. Do something different because you're not that other show. And you're not that other show from the get-go.
Yeah. So we'll see what it is. I mean, I'm very curious to see what they do with the second season, but this show very much had that let's kill off every villain kind of thing that I don't like that shows do. So I'm curious to see what they do next. I'm very curious to see their take on the Joker, a more serial killer style Joker. Let's see if it works.
Yeah.
So I'm very keen on where it goes next, but this first season, it didn't like I'm not like rushing to tell everyone to go watch it. It was good, but it wasn't like
that was my big takeaway too, Taylor. It's like, okay, I watched it. I'm not going to recommend it to somebody.
Yeah. If someone asks me what I thought about it, I'll say, yeah, it was good. It wasn't great. Right. But if you're a Batman fan, give it a go. See what you say.
I think it's a great way to say it. If you like Batman the character, watch him go on some different adventures. But if you're not a Batman fan, this is not going to make you a Batman fan.
Like if someone says, I want to get into Batman for the first time, what should I watch? Batman animated series. Get into Batman that way.
Sure.
After you've gone through all the other shows, then look at this version. But this is no gateway drug to the Batman universe.
Literally watch every single one of those other cartoons.
Yeah.
Batman, Superman, Batman Beyond. Just go through all of those, and then you can come back to this.
The Batman, the Brave and the Bold, Beware the Batman. Do all those too, because those are fun.
Do that Batman Christmas movie on Amazon. I liked it.
Yeah, that weird one where he's got flannel and a beard.
It's great. He fights the Joker in that too. That's a more traditional Joker.
Yeah. But on that note, I would like to know what everyone else thinks about this show because I had my own thoughts. I would like to know. Some people loved it. Some people hated it. I put a poll up on the socials and a lot of people were very divisive about it. So, very interesting. But on that note, thank you all for joining us on this episode of the Culture Nerd Podcast. I have been your host, Taylor Murphy. My co-host, Michael Santel, nicknamed himself Same Shirt Santel today because we just recorded 2 episodes back to back, so he didn't want to change anything. But if you are at home, if you want to help us keep the lights on, head over to the patreon.com/theculturednerd. There are various tiers to our projects, and let us know if you want to help us keep the lights on because we definitely need the help. We love doing what we do, and we just need you to help us. If you're sitting on your couch, like, comment, and subscribe. It's a very simple thing to do for each episode, but it does so much for the episodes. It helps the algorithms work in our favor, and it helps more people find the show. And scan that QR code, bug us on the socials, and tell us what you think. So see y'all next time. Thank you again, everyone. Have a great night.
Bye, everyone.